Hey there, this is Konstantin. I'm a full stack developer, and in this video I'm going to continue working on my small progressive web application built with Solid.js and TypeScript. For this video I'm going to configure local Firebase emulators, configure deployment to Firebase hosting. I will also need to update Firebase library paths because it will be hosted on Firebase, meaning that the paths should be updated. And I'm also going to configure authentication through Google authentication provider using Firebase Authentication. And yeah, to do that, I'm going to develop small component or a set of components looking like logging and logout buttons for now. Later I will be able to improve them, the UI and the behavior. For now, let's get started from installing Firebase tools. Let me Google how to install Firebase tools. Firebase tools, it's a set of libraries and executables which allows to configure stuff locally and set up deployments, set up database configuration indices, etc., depending on your needs. So it's useful to have, and it's recommended to have. I'm working on Linux, so I'm going to use either this command, or in my particular case I'm going to install the Firebase tools through npm, because npm is my package manager for my applications. So yeah, I'm going to install it globally to be able to use it and reuse it for different projects. Let's wait for a while. I think it should not be long. So what else we need here? We will need to log in to Firebase through console, and we will need, just for testing, we will display the list of projects I have on Firebase. Let me check the console. No, it's not yet installed. Let's give it some time to be installed. So I'm going to go to Firebase console for now. I have a few projects here, some of them for testing, some of them real. This is test push second. This is our main application for developing this test version of this application, and then I will be able to switch to a production application with all production settings. For now, this one is the main one for us. So let me check the console again. Yes, it has been installed already, so we can use it. I will just test if Firebase is available. Yes, it's available through the console, which is good. So now I'm going to find hosting in the list of applications here, all products, Firebase console. I'm choosing hosting. Yeah, it suggests me to get started, which I'm going to do. It also recommends installing Firebase tools, which I already done. Okay, let's go to the next step. I need to Firebase login, which I'm going to do through my IDE console, because I'm going to work in the console of, well, in the integrated console of my Visual Studio Code from now on. So let me log in to Firebase. Yeah, I already logged in, which is good, so I don't need to get redirected to Google Cloud to just log in. I already done it. It's pretty straightforward, so you will be able to do it yourselves if you need it. And next step is Firebase init. And Firebase init is combined. It's like an entry point for configuring all the services, all Firebase services and features. So here, and for this particular video, I'm going to use just two of them. First is hosting, which is this one, and also authentication, which is not here, because it should be configured through the Firebase console. So here, since authentication is not present here, I will just use emulators with blank space, and also hosting. These two guys are necessary for me. Press enter. They asked me to choose a project to set up this configuration for. I'm not going to create a new project because I already have one which is intended to be used for this particular scenario, for this particular case. So I will just choose from the existing projects I have. So I will choose this test push second, and the tool asks me if which particular directory I'm going to deploy to production, to Firebase hosting. I'm going to deploy the dist folder, because Vite actually creates production build in the dist folder. So so it asks me if I want to redirect all the requests to index.html, because I'm a single page application. That's right, I'm a single page application, so I'm going to select that. It suggests me to configure builds and deploys with GitHub Actions. I don't think I'm ready to do it right now. I'm going to just build a project locally and deploy the static assets, resulting assets, to the Firebase hosting. Firebase hosting is useful for static files and static assets. It also has some Firebase functions for computing, for dynamic resources, but yeah, for now we don't need it. We will come back to it a bit later when we will need to configure some endpoints, some cloud functions. For now, I'm going to deny creating any GitHub configuration, maybe later. So and now this step asks me to choose which particular services I'm going to emulate through local emulators. I'm going to choose two: authentication emulator and also hosting emulator. Press enter. It asks me about the port for auth emulator. I'm going to use the suggested one. And the port for hosting emulator will be 5000, which is good. And now it asks me whether I'd like to install and configure Emulator UI. Emulator UI is useful when you need to adjust some configuration for your local copies of Firebase services, for instance, create some users, remove some users, etc. So I'm going to install it because I will probably need it later on. And it asks me about the port for Emulator UI. I'm going to accept any random port which is available in the system. It asks me whether I would like to download emulators. Of course, this is why I'm here. So and actually it actually installed the emulators quickly because I already had them in my systems. So it just associated them with my local project, which is good. Let's see what files it created. Firebase RC actually has the project name, and Firebase JSON has settings for emulators, as you may see, and for hosting. So let's check the configuration, whether it's good for us or not. You see the rewrite from any URL to index.html, which is good, which is what we need. Ignore instructs the hosting, the deployment to not deploy this, to ignore these particular files, some configuration files, not modules, etc., which is also good. And public directory, which it will be deployed from, this dist. So it's good. What else here? Actually, to be honest, we will need to build the project before deployment, and there is an official way to do it through Firebase. Let me show you. It's called pre-deploy hook. Pre-deploy hook allows you to run arbitrary commands before deployment. So npm run build. So to build the project before the deployment, I actually instructed my Firebase tools to first run this command, which is good, which is what I needed. But in fact, if I try to deploy it now, let me try to deploy it. Firebase deploy only hosting. This is the command to deploy only hosting configuration, only hosting side of this, because in the future we will have more services to be included here. For instance, Firebase Cloud Functions, which should be deployed separately, and every deployment actually eats up some computing time and storage, and it can mean that it will cost some money. So we actually we have a name to save the amount of money we'd like to spend, right? That's why also I didn't configure GitHub Actions to deploy on each particular commit to Git, because every time I do it, I'm at risk to run deployment to Firebase, and it would mean potentially in the future would mean that I spend some money on that, right? So it's better for me to kind of build the application locally to save that those resources and consequentially money. So we are going lean, so we are going to deploy rarely, at least for now. Maybe later we can change the strategy, we will be able to change the strategy, but for now it should be good. So I'm going to deploy the application, current version of the application. I think dist folder has something inside. It has an example of the application. If I deploy it right now, I will see some stuff on Firebase. So I'm going to deploy it right now. Let's give it some time. It actually ran the build command which I requested before the deployment, right? npm run build, which is what we need. Yeah, and you can see that the project deployment is accessible by this link, and also it's hosted on Firebase. I will open it now to show you how it looks. Yeah, now you see that it's the application. My application is open here. It's not correct. It's a saved version. I think it's outdated because it should. Oh no, it's really, yeah, it's right. That's right. I thought that it won't be built before, and it would deploy just the initial version first. But since I configured building the application through settings, that's good. That's why they see the application here deployed. I will just clear the cache just in case, to make sure that the application is up to date, because I tested some stuff, and sometimes I'm not sure whether this is it's my previous version or new one, because of the service worker, which is caching stuff, right? So here we see the updated version of the application, which is good, which is what we wanted to test. So we just deployed our application to Firebase, which is what they wanted to achieve. But in the future, and for a while I'm developing the application, I will deploy less often, meaning that I'm going to use the emulation of Firebase hosting here locally. And how can I do that? Let's close this for now. I will just update the Firebase console to see the deployments, to show you the deployments. You see that I've just deployed my mail and some application URLs here, which is good. We've configured config, as I said. But now I'm going to show you how to test it locally. Of course, Vite provides some preview approach also, but we want to be closer to Firebase environment, meaning that we need Firebase library URLs to be working locally, and which is not possible with Vite, as far as I understand that. So we need to test with Firebase emulators. I'm going to run Firebase emulators now. Emulators start. Let's see what happens when I start emulators. Remember, I configured emulators for authentication and for hosting for two particular services and for two particular ports. And the emulator UI you may see here is available on 4000 port number. So I'm going to open this localhost URL and see what I have here. You can see the list of services, local services, and some of them off, some of them on. For instance, authentication emulator is on, and it's available on port 9099, and hosting emulator is available on port 5000, which is what I wanted to achieve. If I use the view website link now, I see my application here displayed and opened. Okay, well, what else? I will show you the authentication emulator configuration. So you can see here some settings. One account per email address. It can happen that user can use different authentication providers such as Google, Facebook, or something else to log in through our site, to log in through our login button. So here it actually configures the authentication approach the way that we will create one account for one email, even if this same email is used through different authentication providers. Here I can create test users, just configure email, name, etc., and choose the way they are going to be authenticated. Some default settings provided here. I'm not going to create user right now. I will show you the way I'm going to authenticate users later on. Then I implement buttons, login and logout buttons through my application. Now we can see that we configured emulator suite, and we configured hosting. So we are more or less ready to continue. But one thing, I'm going to stop hosting my site locally, stop emulators for now, just to create a command to run this emulators automatically. What if I call this command serve and just for simplicity, right? So I'm going to first build the app, and second run the emulators, Firebase emulators. Start. Yeah, this is just to simplify things. So next time I run the npm run surf command, I'm going to first build the application and second configure emulators. I probably don't need to do that, because when I deploy, and I don't need to do it for the deployment because I have pre-deploy hook here, but actually locally I don't factually deploy the application. It's already here in dist folder, and it just surfs through the local emulator. So that's why I added build command explicitly here for starting emulators. So yeah, now we are more or less good. I'm going to mention one thing here, and if you missed this code I developed previous time and this time, it's located on messaging branch. I actually created a new messaging branch because this application needs some love, some work, so before I can deploy it to production. So I actually develop inside a separate branch, messaging branch. This application is hosted on Vercel at the moment. As soon as I finish all the tasks planned to be able to deploy it to Firebase completely, I will switch the hosting provider through DNS records, but for now we are good having the application, leaving the application inside the separate branch, just so you know. So now I think we are ready to develop Firebase authentication button, authentication through just let me open console again. I just closed it accidentally. So yeah, and for authentication we need to set up our authentication provider. It can be many: user password authentication, it can be phone authentication, it can be Google, Facebook, whatever you prefer. But for the simplicity and for the needs of particular application, I'm going to use just one authentication provider, which is Google Authentication. So I'm going to set up Google Authentication through this guide, or how to say, wizard. Enable it here, the public face name for the project. I don't know where it's used. Okay, for example, yeah, we don't care about it much, but let's keep it this way. Later, when I will be configuring a production application, I will mention the real user-facing, public-facing name here. For now, for testing, it's okay to have this one. And support email, you have to set the support email here, because otherwise users wouldn't be able to contact you if there are any issues with authenticating through your application. And one more thing I want to mention is that why do I need authentication at all in such a simple application? Let me open it again. This is the very simple application, right? But I want to inform users one day before new and full moon dates. And for that, I need to implement push notifications. And I'm going to implement push notifications through Firebase services, Firebase Cloud Messaging Services. Previous time, I already configured Service Worker for that, for receiving messages in background, which is a good step. And to be able to associate every user when they accept, then they subscribe to my notifications, to my application notifications. A token, a unique token, is generated for them. So if I want to keep these tokens consistent, and if I want to associate every particular user with the token and be able to discard or remove the token, I need to know some user ID or something. That's why I'm going to authenticate user through Google Authentication first, and then I will be able to associate that user, Google account with the notification token for Google Cloud Messaging. And if user wants to discard or cancel their subscription, it will be easier for them and for me to do that. So that's why I need Google Authentication here, and it's easier to manage user accounts, easier to manage user token, etc. So I think it's a reasonable step forward. Let us develop simple button for authenticating through Google using Firebase Authentication Service. Now I'm going to open my code files here and components. I don't think I need these configurations files here anymore for now, and package design is okay. So the main file, the main code file, is app.tsx. So it has the layout for our application. Of course, we can extract this code to a separate layout, something like higher order component, which is very popular concept in React, for instance. But I don't like to improve the application prematurely. So let us do it one step at a time. And for now, I'm going to develop a button to authenticate our users. First, let me just add the button at the top. Just a simple HTML button saying something like sign in. And I'm going to create a sign-in click handler. It's a function. I won't need. I probably need HTML. Yeah, let me remember how it's called. The click handler in Solid.js. I don't know. TypeScript. Let me try to recall it. Mouse event. It's not about Solid actually. It's about just HTML specification. So HTML button element, something like this. And if I add this on click handler here, yeah, we'll be able to do it. I need the type preferences imported, but unfortunately I don't have them. How to add the types for this particular? Okay, let me Google. I need to Google mouse events types Solid.js binding events. Let me check. Yeah, on click handler data. Okay, so Solid.js doesn't suggest using types, but let me find it. It should be similar to what I normally do in React. Yeah, okay. Let us not spend much time on that. It's just actually cosmetic stuff, and so I'm going to just remove that and use it without types. Just assuming that this particular type is this event is of particular type. Let it be any for now. I will improve it later. Don't want to focus on it right now. So, and here we need to call API function or something like this to sign in the user. Yeah, I will just leave to-do comment here. Now I'm going to create a module with some helper functions here. First thing I need is create a folder called auth. The folder will contain init.ts, similar to init.ts of the main Firebase application, and also messaging also has init. Actually, I can also create a separate folder for messaging. Every service would have its particular how to say folder. And if I use index, I will not need to configure the paths, reconfigure the paths. But okay, let me keep it init for now. I can get back to it later. So auth is service should be initialized similar way as messaging, but this function will be just different. Yeah, and it should be exported from auth, get auth, something like this. And let me rename it to auth. So the similar way we initialize the application, the similar way. So the import the application configuration, the already pre-configured application, and actually decorate it with necessary service, for instance, authentication service, or in this particular case, in case of messaging, they decorate it with messaging service. So, and now I'm going to create a new module, utils, call it utils.ts, and create just two functions. First is auth sign-in. This function will be used for signing in the user, for communicating with Firebase authenticating service in order to actually authenticate the user. So it's going to be a async function. And I'm going to return wait, and here I need to import actually sign in, I don't remember how it's named, the function from the Firebase authentication package, sub-package, sign in with pop-up. I think sign in div pop-up. Yes, that's right. And auth, the decorated application should be passed as a parameter to this function. Yep, now we are good, and we can actually export this function already. And I'm going to create just a second. Oh, why it's complaining? Oh yeah, I need a provider with which I want to authenticate the user. In my particular case, Google Authentication Provider. Let me set up it here. Google Auth Provider. It's just yeah, it's not callable. Yeah, I need I need to instantiate it as a class, as an object, and pass it to this function as the second argument. So now we are good. We can create a copy of this function for signing out, actually, because signing out is even simpler, should be even simpler. Just sign out, and that's it. Yeah, which doesn't need a provider because it signs out regardless the provider. So we have util functions for signing in user and for signing out. Let's integrate them into our UI. Here I'm going to be using let me name this function as sing, also set it as a sing, because I'm going to use async stuff inside. So await auth signing. So yeah, and I need to catch errors, right? That's why I need try catch statements here, or how to call them, whatever they are called. Try catch will help me catch errors for now. I'm going to just console error them, or even, yeah, I think we should be good. Yeah, console error should be good here. I wanted to display it on the screen, but yeah, not necessary now. It's not the point of this particular tutorial. So let me also cache what this function returns, and it should actually returns a user, authenticated user, and I'm going to store this particular user object inside a new signal, user signal, because I will need to use this user data later on. I think at least I will show you that it's working for this particular tutorial. I won't go deep, but yeah. So this creating a signal function should be typed as user credential from the Firebase auth package, because the thing that is returned from this particular API request is user credentials. So if I set user through the signal method, let me see if it works or not. I will just remove unnecessary stuff here. And what else? Let me create another button for signing out here, and I also need a separate click handler here. Sign out click handler, which is similar with one difference. We don't need to catch what the function returns. Just we want to perform this call, and yeah, just ignore the result. There is not the result, but the returning value. We still catch errors here the same way, but yeah, don't care about the result. Sign out. Okay, let me display user email here. Some user information confirming the logged in user. So user is actually a accessor, so we need to call it as a function here in Solid.js, and we need to access the user subfield and actually use the display name. sign out as, yeah, let's see. So now we are more or less ready to run the application and see what happens. I'm going to run the application through my new serve command to first build it and then open this build web application through the emulator, hosting emulator, right? With auth emulation also available, also enabled. Let it build everything and configure everything. Now I can just open my application. Yeah, the application should be open as it says on 5000 port. Let's just open the app and see. Yes, the app is open. We see some service worker here, which is good. And now that I just reloaded the page, the service worker updated the cache because the checkbox is set here. So, and now they see two buttons. One is sign in, another one is sign out. If I click sign in, I should trigger user signing in through through the Google authentication provider. Let me do it now and see what happens. It should open pop up, and yeah, it just complained about something. Unauthorized domain, unauthorized domain. Okay, current domain is not authorized for auth operations with prevent. Okay, link with pop-up. Okay, settings, authorized domain, stop. So it recommends me going to Firebase console authentication settings and allow this particular test domain in there. I'm going to do that. Open the authentication, reload it, I think. Let me check what's the path. Authentication settings, authorized domain names. Okay. Settings, authorized domains. Localhost should be allowed, but okay, if it wants me to add 127 loop here, to not a big problem, but I think, yeah, the problem is a bit different. Let me check if it works or not and then see. Yeah, custom default Vefik. Let me run the application again, update the service worker and press sign in button again. Yeah, and now it's actually loading the my real authentication, real Google authentication, but I want my application to authentication to go through the emulation, the local emulation, not real production. So I'm going to close this for now and Google how to set the authentication emulation for my application. Okay, Firebase auth local emulator connect. Yeah, this is the documentation page with connect your app to the authentication emulator, which is what I actually want. Let me scroll down a little. So what they recommend me doing is to add this function call after initializing authentication service. So let me do it and see what happens. I have authentication here. I will just add this function call, and I know exactly that the port is 9099, the default one for this particular service here, for local service here. So yeah, let me try to rerun the application with full emulation and full rebuilding. It takes some short time to regenerate the application, start emulators, but still it should not be very long. Let me reload the app here. Yeah, and it needs to be reloaded one more time to update. Yeah, it complains that notification permissions are blocked here. I'm going to enable it to just to remove these warnings. Yeah, to not interrupt us from what we are going to do. Failed to execute subscribe on push manager, suppression failed, no active service worker. We'll reload the page one more time. It will register the service worker. Yeah, it did actually, and created a token for notifications, which I actually mentioned. This particular token should be associated with this particular user inside Firebase, so we could manage it easier. So we could remove tokens, add new tokens, update token, etc. And you see the message here running in emulator mode, which means that this particular function call actually worked and run my application authentication part of my application locally through emulation. So I'm going to press sign in button again. So we see a bit different window here, and I'm going to add my new user here, test example.com, display name test. Okay, let's call him Bob. Profile photo, we can keep it empty for now. Sign in with Google.com. Yeah, and you see that the button, this sign out button, says sign out as Bob. If I press the sign out button, I should trigger signing out through local version of Firebase authentication service. Let me do it. Just click that button. No, it didn't work for some reason, right? Why it didn't work? Let me see the code. Okay, it should work. Yeah, it should be more or less good. Let me see. Sign on. Yeah. Yeah, it looks good, to be honest. I don't know why I don't want to. Okay, I guess it's just not updated through the Solid.js. Let's see. I will just reload the page, sign in again with Bob, and it changed the button label. Now I want to click it and sign out, but yeah, it didn't work, unfortunately. What happens here and why it complains? Oh, okay, it's just my mistake. Never mind. Okay, sign out. Oh, sign out. Okay, all right. Okay, yeah, I know what happens here. I didn't set the user through the signal. The user should be set to undefined again, because the default state of not authenticated user signal is undefined. So now we need to update the app. If I reload it here, actually it's not gonna work because I need to rebuild the app actually, but let's check just in case. No, of course not. I need to rebuild the app. I'm going to stop the emulation and rerun it again. I'm not yet sure how to implement hot reloading, to not do it every time, to not rebuild the application every time. I have some ideas how to do it through workarounds, like npm, like Node Manager second version, but or Node Moon or something like this. But yeah, it would be rather workarounds. So yeah, I will Google and research on that. Maybe I could find a better solution. For now, it's not the point of this particular tutorial. Let's keep it as is. Let me reload the app. The service worker should update the application actually, and now I can sign in. Yeah, it's cleared the Bob data, but yeah, Bob. Sign in with Google. Yeah, good. If I click sign in, sign out as Bob, yes, it signed it out, which is good. It's not everything I wanted to do here. I'm going to use show component, which is provided by Solid.js, to display only one button depending on the state of the user, authentication state of the user. I can actually stop the emulation for now and add this show component here. Yes, and this component actually uses some condition, and I'm going to use user condition here, and fallback is the sign in button component, because it should be displayed if the user is empty, right? And this button should be inside of the show component. I will just save the file, reformat the code, and try to run it again. Let's see what happens. Solid.js has a few primitives which are very helpful, especially in its particular context, because yeah, it processes reactivity. It handles reactivity a little bit differently compared to React and other frameworks, which is actually also an advantage. But yeah, a bit different approach we should be aware of. So I'm going to reload the application here. Yeah, and now you see only one button, sign in, which I'm going to click now. Yeah, I need to log in as Bob again, create a Bob, example.com, Bob, okay, sign in. Yeah, and you see sign out button as a because the user already authenticated. When I click it, I see sign in button as a fallback for the main logic. So which is good. This sign in and sign out button is ready. More or less, of course, we need to change the look and feel of this button, right? But for now, I think we are more or less good. There is one thing I'd like to change also here, or actually two things. Let me improve this by introducing some condition here, because if I'm gonna use environment variables through with bundler. With bundler actually can use .env notation for environment variables. I think, as far as I know, by default it's enabled by default. I will just add env file here with some constant. For instance, what is going to be? It's going to be something like emulator enabled or something like this. Emulate. Okay, let's call it emulate. Let's keep it simple for now. Or actually, .env file can be just key value. I think it should be enough. Let me Google what's the format of env file with yeah, just, yeah, you see that, yeah, it suggests naming files with local prefix, and it would be even better because I'm not going to push this file to Git, because it's just a local setting for my local development. And so yeah, you see the format of the file. I just forgot the format, always did it automatically. Emulate, okay, we see emulate variable here, and I'm going to set it to true. Emulate is true, and I'm going to check it here if import meta env emulate is set and it's true. If it's set and it's true, then we are going to enable this local emulation for authentication. Otherwise, it should be production authentication. So let me check. And I need this condition here probably because it's safer to use it this way. Okay, let me rerun the application, but change the setting to false here and check which particular authentication provider is used, local or production authentication, Google authentication provider. I need to rebuild the application and run it in emulation mode. Let's give it a few seconds. Can reload my app here. Service worker is updated, which is good. If I click the button, what happens is it actually runs the production authentication provider, which is good for production but not good for local. I'm going to set it to true, emulate, or better to name it something like emulate. Let's keep it simple. Emulate for now. I will find a better name later. We'll just rerun the emulators and rebuild the application to check that we actually load the authentication provider in local mode, local authentication provider. Let's wait until it starts the emulation and reload the application. Yeah, they need to update the service worker. Yes, sign in. No, for some reason it loads production authentication again, which I don't like. Let me try it again. No. Let me check if maybe the service worker is not updated or something like this. To make sure, I'm going to just unregister all the service workers and reset all cached files here. Reload the app again and try authentication again. Now it loads production mode. Subscribe. What it complains about? Yeah, we don't care much about what it complains about, but we need to update this particular logic. What I'm going to do is to do it a bit wiser. We have a config here, right? We can use this config to store these particular settings as well, or to be precise, to kind of create a new variable which would mirror the environment settings. Something like emulate here, and I'm going to use this settings here in my config file, But the difference is that I would suggest a replacement, like a default value for this particular environment variable. If it's not set, then it should be false. It's kind of better because in some circumstances we need to replace this with some scripts before deployment, Docker deployment, etc. So it's better to keep all these settings in one place. So I will just use the emulate config variable here first. Yeah, and it's safe to use it this way. We don't need to check if it's defined or not, because we provided an alternative to it, right? It's better to do it this way, probably. Yeah. What if I just rebuild the application and see what happens? Maybe it would help, maybe not, probably not, but yeah, I need to try, I need to test that. Let it rebuild the application and run the emulators. Later I will improve this build stage. Maybe I would keep the emulators always run and just rebuild the application. Let's see, maybe it would be better and cheaper in terms of building time. So I'm going to click sign up. No, it still requires me to authenticate through the production version, through the Firebase authentication production version. So yeah, for some reason it doesn't see this emulate functions during build, so it doesn't replace it. What if I just rename this local to just env and try the same, because maybe this local config is not supplied for some reason. Let's wait for a moment. Yay. Waiting. And now we can reload the page again. No. Okay, for some reason it doesn't see this env setting during the build stage. And what I need to do here is probably something like this. Production or something like this. Let me just read through the documentation which we provide. With client, web worker, all this stuff. Okay, we're actually in production mode. Okay, good. Should be good. I don't know why it doesn't want to work, but yeah, we'll try it one more time. And yeah, if it doesn't work, okay, we will find a solution later on. I don't want to keep you for long here because it's almost done. It's probably a matter of some configuration or something. Maybe I need to import this environment file through the Vite explicitly. I don't know. It should work by default out of the box, but it's not working. So no, it's not working. Okay, let's assume we run the application in emulation mode here. Just always, for now it's good while we are testing. Later I will find a better solution. No, should be good. For some reason it's not working. It happens. We will find a solution. I'm just rebuilding the application to make sure that the proper local authentication provider is used for authentication, and then I'm going to change one more thing for today and we are good. Let me run. Yes, and it actually runs the local authentication provider. I will also read and research on the better way to set the authentication provider through code, something like this. Maybe something already provided by default, some I don't know, configuration variable for, I don't know, anything. It can be anything, whatever they implemented it. Okay, we are good now. We can stop the emulation, and I'm going to change one more thing for today, and the last one for today. We have Firebase messaging service worker, which we configured last time, and it actually works fine. It actually connects, it actually receives the background messages from Firebase when I send test messages, which is good. But since I actually host the application on Firebase, I don't need to explicitly mention the paths here, which is actually useful, and because first of all, because it's cached, right? It's pre-cached and everything lives inside the same kind of sandbox on Firebase, so it's better to use their version. So, and their version can be accessed through these paths, and I'm going to change the paths here and test if it's working. Actually, to test if it's working, I don't need to actually I do need to load the application in through emulation, because then the application would see the Firebase. Let me run it. We don't really need the comments here. Let's keep it simple. We know exactly what happens here. It's just from some documentation. We don't need it. It's too obvious to have it here. Yeah, one thing, I need to rerun the build process every time. I'm going to research on that, as I mentioned, later and improve it. And let me just wait one moment before it runs the emulators, and I can now reload the application. And one more time for service workers to be updated. Let's take a look at Firebase messaging. Yeah, we see that the paths have been changed, which is good. I'm going to test one thing. Is initially, before, it was possible to initialize, since this particular project sits inside Firebase already pre-configured instance of Firebase, pre-configured hosting, which is kind of should be kind of connected to other services in my particular account, in my particular project there. So why if we try to kind of use the configuration which is provided there, which is already accessible, instead of explicitly mention it through service worker, because this stuff is not flexible at all. You need to replace, to implement some replacement of this particular API keys, domains all the time. For ideally, you need to replace them with some environment variables. Yeah, but what if it's possible to configure this stuff automatically? What if I try to use init.js, which is provided by Firebase? It's my experiment. Maybe it's a bad idea, I don't know, but what if it works? Let me just reload the app, because it would be ideal if somehow we could get this information from Firebase itself. Maybe it's just too naive to assume, but previously it worked for some of my applications, Firebase applications. Let's see if it now works. Maybe it doesn't work for the emulation stuff, but so yeah, one thing it complains about is I need to pass use emulator through here. Okay, I can do that. It's hard code actually. We need a condition here also pass through environment variables or something like this, but for now we can be good with that. But we still need to rebuild the application and reload emulators. Okay. Every second we wait, they spend some time, so I need to optimize it definitely later on. Yep. Yeah, you see the application reloaded and the off emulator mode is set to local. So off is set to local emulation and token is generated. Let me see the service worker, Firebase messaging service worker. Yeah, we have everything commented out. I'm interested. What if I send a test message? Will it be received by my application without this configuration stuff? Yeah, I'm going to send test message through Firebase messaging interface here. Test one for today, not for okay. Send test message, and they need this new token to be supplied. Let's see if it's new. Actually, it might be not new. It's already no, it's new actually. So I'm going to add this, remove this old one and add this new one. Yep, and I can send a test message now. Let's wait. Yeah, it's received. It's received by the application, which is good. It's ideal for us because we don't need to set these settings explicitly here. Yeah, the only thing I need to work on later on is setting this emulation for local environment, but I will work on it later. For now we are good. I think it's all I wanted to show you today, and what we've done actually, the setup Firebase local emulators for hosting and for authentication service. It's not that hard to do it right, and local emulators actually saves your money, saves your quota. When you deploy to your hosting or to your Firebase Cloud Functions or to any service, when you deploy it in real, then you use it through your application in production, you can actually be charged by Firebase for usage, right? So I want to minimize the number of accesses to the production Firebase services. I want to use like local emulation. That's why I installed and configured local emulators for the applications, and also configured Firebase hosting. We even deployed it once. I will show you the deployed version of our application. Again, you see every deployment, I mean, at least this particular one has its domains, and yeah, it's already here. And so let's come back to the agenda. And so we configured this deployment, tried it once, And I will not need it in the future, obviously, because Firebase emulators provide me with some local replacement. I will, when I finish the application to the point and I'm ready to deploy to production, to deploy to the Firebase hosting, real Firebase hosting, I will do it. But for now, I'm more or less good. I updated Firebase library paths in my service worker. I planned it actually for this particular video because it's important for me. It actually saves some time for me for supplying environment variables to this particular service worker file, and it's not kind of straightforward thing to do because this particular service worker file, it's JS file, as you see, and it's already located in the public folder, and we actually we don't build it. We supply it ready to use. So I didn't want to create another entry point for my Vite configuration to build this file, to supply some information to it, at least at this particular point. So it's good for us if we don't need to supply these particular settings. It's good. It's ideal way of doing stuff. Let's see. Let's hope it works. In the future too. So we configured authentication provider, Google authentication provider, production one. And we also configured local one, as you've seen, and they created an authentication button, which can actually authenticate user, and sign out button also. So later on, I will improve the layout and behavior of this particular control or UI element. Now it's more or less good. It lets us test this stuff, which is more important than just visual. Yeah, so I think we are good now, and I'm gonna stop for today and come back to you later on when I have some more features, some more improvements for this particular application. For now, thank you very much for your time, and see you next time.